Okay.
Okie dokie. So today we're talking about chapter 4, and it wasn't as traumatizing to read as chapter 3. I'll tell you that. It was it wasn't that bad. But I do have some questions, particularly about this obsession with aging that you had when you were 13 years old. Can you tell me more about that? Like, where did it come from? And because I try to make the connection, like maybe the way your parents were with you and the way your mother was, you felt like all people who were older were kind of mean or misunderstood you. I don't know. So maybe you can share a little bit about this obsession you had with aging. Where did it come from? And just give more information about that.
Thanks for asking that. I think where it started, and I'll tell you why it started. When I was 13, I took a trip to New York to visit my grandmother and her husband, and I visited my relatives. The My grandmother and her husband went to, and he's not my grandfather, so they had a place they lived in New York City, but they had a place in upstate New York where they went to stay, Putnam Valley, New York, and they went to stay there in this for like a month in the summer, and they took me there for a few days, and it was for senior citizens, and there was only one other kid my age. And I believe what happened is at that same time I was going through all the death obsessions and fears, and I started to think that, oh my gosh, when I'm this age, I'll be close to death. And that's what really scared me. So it wasn't so much about being older as old age meant death. So, and I was terrified of death. So they were kind of, let me get some water really quickly. So it was always tied to the fear of death. And then when I was an adult, it was tied to the fear of, I would have this ailment and this ailment, but it was mostly about the fear of death.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense because naturally you think as you get older, you're getting closer to death. So you didn't want to experience that. I
Yeah.
totally get that. So how did, obviously I know you feel differently about it now. You've had your awakening, you've, had you've done a lot of diving into near-death experiences. I know that you go to therapy now. So how do you feel about death now?
How do I feel like death now? Sometimes I can't wait. No, I mean that's a bad thing to say because I enjoy life. As I said in the book, life is magical and death is magical to me. Death, I mean, I can't not believe it because to me it's more than a belief, and I'm not telling people what to think. It's a knowing after all my experiences that death is going home to my soul's home, to my spiritual home. And it doesn't not only doesn't scare me, but it's not that I'm looking forward to it like, let's hurry up, but it's exciting. It's actually exciting. And as far as the aging, I obviously don't want to have an infirmity or something. I haven't, but I don't even think about it anymore. About when I had this, started this awakening, the obsessions that I'd had for like 60 years about death and aging and also about my body weight, they vanished. They really did vanish. Other things were more work, but those three things just vanished and they haven't been back.
Yeah, I can relate to that. When I started researching and learning about near-death experiences, I couldn't go back once I learned it. I couldn't unlearn it. Once I read something, I couldn't unread it. So it also helped me tremendously with my fears about death. And I can totally relate to that. And also, you mentioned your obsession with food or your the issues that came up with food. I was curious when I was reading this whole thing about food and diet, and how your mother would kind of like make, comments about what you were eating or how much you were eating. So I wanted to know, what was that about? Did it come from some kind of social pressure with you were supposed to look a certain way? Or was it like that you were obese and she was, trying to keep you healthy? Like, what was that about?
Well, I now know what it's about because of my therapist. My therapist asked me, well, what was your history with weight? And I said, oh yeah, my mother was a fat kid and she was teased all the time. So really, at its core, because I always wondered why she didn't do that with my brothers, at its core, it was actually done in love. She didn't want me to be teased away. She was teased as a kid. She was protecting me. She just didn't know as a human being how to be a mother, how to go about this. So the way she did it, and it was not only the way she did it, but the fact that I was never obese. I've never been obese. I've been heavier than I am now. I've been she it was a combination of things, that the way she did it and the fact that I used food as a substitute for friends. So I would look forward to meal times and certain food because I was using food to give me comfort, even though I wasn't obese. So between that and my mother saying, you can't eat that, she was like taking a friend away from me. So it was just a combination of factors, but it was really done it was wonderful to realize it was really done because she didn't want me to suffer the same humiliation she did when she was a kid. That was a real eye opener.
Yeah, that kind of makes me like your mother a bit more now. I didn't like her very much as I was reading the book. I was like, this lady is terrible and she's so mean to little Lynn. I didn't like that very much. But knowing this now gives a lot of context and a lot of insight. And I'm glad you shared that because I'm sure readers feel the way I feel, like, goodness, she's mean all the time. And now she's telling her what to eat too. But really, that was out of love. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. But one thing that I did find extremely disturbing in chapter 4, Lynn, was when you were 15 and you went to the psychiatrist, or they took you, um, and they did a bunch of tests and they didn't share what the results were. I mean, you were 15, you could understand, but they didn't share the results. And then they took you to another psychiatrist, did another bunch of tests. And then the psychiatrist says that you are schizophrenic, which you were not, and put you on medication that made you a zombie. That for me was just, I know it still happens today. And I am aware of cases where it does happen still today, but it's still, I felt so bad reading that because I was like, this is a 15-year-old girl. She's a teenager. She's gonna scream at her mother. I screamed at my mother when I was 15. There were a lot of issues that you did have, but like you can clearly see certain things you did at a certain age. It's like, yeah, maybe she was just a teenager. Maybe she was just had, a bunch of raging hormones, and this was how she expressed herself. But putting you on medication that completely zombified you, I did not like that they did that to you.
Yeah, the psychologist ran a whole battery of tests, which well, I was sent on the assumption there was something wrong with me. The psychiatrist, I don't know if these were like Rorschach tests and all these things, the ink blot tests. The psychiatrist, I don't know if she did tests or she just talked to me. I think she did some kind of testing, but it was different, asked questions. And yeah, she told me I was schizophrenic. I was 16. It was the following year. And the medication she gave me, it was Thorazine, which is a really strong antipsychotic. And and yeah, it zoned me out. Um, I didn't know what was going on. I was asleep all the time and what and my mother, she told me, like, we talked when I was an adult, and she said that she was horrified and she pulled me out of there right away to her credit. What surprised me is in there later in the book, so I won't go into detail, is 2 years later when I developed anorexia from not eating anything, she sent me back to the same psychiatrist, and I still don't understand that. If she had been horrified and pulled me out, there's got to be more psychiatrists in Los Angeles County than just the one. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I don't understand that either.
yeah, I
Um,
didn't understand it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions, and I don't want to say, you know, say what I'm thinking because it's not very nice thoughts. So we'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah.
it's still remains shocking to me. And we spoke about this last week when we spoke about chapter 3, the generation gap and how different things were back then and how different it is now. And one of the things is, for an example, I was curious to know because you went to school in France for a bit. What was it like there back then?
School in France. Um, the school I got, well, I'd always loved French in France. And I wanted to get away from high school. There were bullies and I wasn't fitting in. I went to school in France in 1973 to 74 and I was 17 and 18. I got bullied there too because wherever I go, I take me with me. And a lot of it's just being, shy, but a lot of it, honestly, a lot of it was my behavior. I didn't have any self-confidence or self-love. So I'm open myself up here, bully me. It was the French and France part was wonderful. The bullies, not so much. The school in France I put in the book, I did not know, and I do not think my parents knew, to their credit, that it was a school for troubled teenagers. So those teenagers had from ages 13 to 18 had all sorts of emotional problems. Not like psychosis or anything, but just rebellious youth, youth that parents did not want to deal with anymore. And I chose to go. It wasn't my parents who sent me there, but all sorts of youth with all sorts of emotional problems. And that did not help me at all. So after the bullying, living in dormitories with those kinds of kids, and it wasn't the whole school, I moved in with a family and it was a lot better. It was just a woman, her grandson, and two other 18-year-olds, and I was 17, and that was a lot better after that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. And then you also mentioned that when you were in college, you met your soulmate, but
It wasn't college, it was age 15.
oh,
It
you were
was
still in school.
16, 1972.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I got that confused. But it
Yeah.
was so interesting to me because you found out later in a regression that he was your soulmate, yet you never had a long relationship with him. You went on one
No.
date and that was the end of the relationship, yet he was your soulmate. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people might have, myself included, I had this misunderstanding about soulmate relationships that they need to be long and drawn out and they need to have a significant impact on your life and you need to change each other's lives and, all
No.
the stuff that you read in romance novels. But it wasn't so.
No, it wasn't so. I mean, it depends on what the souls agree to. Soulmates and I've heard you can have many soulmates, and I'm not even sure what I mean by we're soulmates, except that we are. I mean, we're closer as souls than to even other souls in the group. Um, Soulmates can agree that one won't even come one time and the other one will for some reason. more often than not from what I've heard, and this is only the people who talk about it because I don't know, there's a lot of people on the planet that more often than not, it's some kind of significant relationship, although the relationship can be business partners that fight all the time. It doesn't have to be, you know, husband and wife or mother and child. It can be, they can agree to, and I've had lives where me and that soul have agreed to like fight or have a relationship that is not very pleasant. So it can be all sorts of things. And this life, it was
Yes,
just a brief relationship. And then I started having the dreams about this person for years and years and years. And I'm like, why? We went on one date. Why
yeah.
am I dreaming about this person?
Wow. And it's funny because you mentioned that a soulmate can take on any kind of situation. It's not what we think. I actually published a book some time ago. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And this person was describing a soulmate relationship with their dog. Their dog, uh, I don't know. It was just that this person was one way. They were also, in a sense, like you, they had a lot of anxiety, a lot of limiting beliefs about themselves and all this. And then they got this dog, and then their life changed, and they had this relationship with this animal that was like, I don't know, she was just more calm and, caring for this animal, helped them in many different ways. And it was just a very, I don't know how you would describe it. I don't know if I would say a comic relationship. I don't know, but it was definitely a soul bond type thing with her dog. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I have heard that. I have
Yeah.
heard that. I used to believe because of the what Michael Newton wrote that people are always people and animals are always animals.
Yeah.
Um, that's turned out not to be the case from the regressions. I've heard regret, and that's not the prevailing ex I've never been anything but a human, which is really unique. I've never been on another world, not yet, and I've never been an animal. Um, it's common though. Um, even going the other way, because I know there are belief systems, and I'm not saying anything's wrong or right. I'm just talking experientially. There are systems where once you're a human, you don't go back to being an animal because animals are considered a lower form of life, or, you know,
Yeah, I've
people do.
also learned that that kind of isn't the case, that animals are animals and humans are humans. And through a few different
Mhm.
experiences, one was through doing that book, because it turns out the author of that book, she actually does similar to what a psychic medium does, but with animals, and she heals
Yeah.
animals. So she works a lot with horses and dogs and cats. And let's say the horse has some kind of injury or their behavior is different, she can interact with them and find out what's wrong and heal that animal. And then she can do regressions as well. So if your animal maybe has passed on, she can communicate with them and, give details. And I actually experienced that when my mother's cat had died. She did a mediumship session, I guess you would call it. And she said things that she wouldn't have known, about. So I knew that this was the right connection. I knew that she was making connection with the right animal and things like that. So I've also come to find, and the things that she said, in general, that she had mentioned to me, that animals can sometimes be guardian spirits, or they can be a
Hmm.
guardian, almost like a guardian angel in a way, but
Right.
more in a physical form, but not human in this life. And they
Yeah.
can, especially animals who tend to be like, what do you call them? Service animals.
Right.
If you are in a certain, I don't know, have a disability or something, and you get a service animal that helps you, they tend to be a lot more advanced than just your, I don't want to say just your regular
Oh,
pet,
yeah.
because that doesn't sound nice, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I've had heard of regressions that I've listened to where people say, I've been human and I wanted a certain experience as a soul. So one time I came back as a tree, you know, all sorts of experiences are possible. It's not, if one person said I came back as a butterfly one time because I wanted, and so it's not the people have had experiences that show to me, and this is my belief system, that it's not necessarily true that it can't be back and forth and back and forth and back. It's what the soul needs or for learning.
Yeah, and anything is possible. I mean, we're speaking of infinity here, where anything,
Right.
everything is possible. So, from our limited understanding as humans, it's like, yeah, cat, dog, whatever. But really, it's infinite, the possibilities are infinite. And so I want to thank you, Lynn, for
Oh
discussing
yeah.
chapter
Well,
4
thank
with
you.
me. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I'm excited for chapter 5. Next week,
Yeah.
we'll be talking all about chapter 5. And again, I'll put the link to your website and your book, Overcoming Adversity. I'll put it in the description. People can go and find it. They can go and read it for themselves. Um, yes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And
I
I'll see you next
appreciate
week.
you. Have a
Bye bye.
wonderful
You
day,
too.
Lynn.
You too. Bye
Bye.
bye.